The galaxy was vast, filled with thousands of civilizations, each with its own history, culture, and ambition. But even in such a grand stage, fear spread faster than light. The name that carried this fear was the Drexel, a ruthless marauder species who thrived on conquest. They swept through systems like a storm, leaving silence and ashes behind. Now their gaze had turned to the Tarvel, a gentle people known for their music, art, and peaceful ways. The Tarvel were not warriors. Their ships were meant for exploration. Their cities built for beauty, not defense. When the Drexel fleets arrived at their borders, they stood no chance. World after world fell, their cries echoing across the stars. In desperation, the Tarvel turned to the Galactic Concord, the union of advanced races meant to keep peace. The conquered debated endlessly, sending words, not action. Diplomats argued that intervention might destabilize the region. To the Tarvel, it felt like betrayal. Still, hope remained. One name lingered in the minds of the desperate: humans. Humans were new to the conquered. Only a few decades ago, they had emerged from their isolated homeworld, Earth, and stepped onto the galactic stage. To many, they were curiosities, fragile creatures from a dangerous, hostile planet. Their world was so harsh it had earned them the title of Deathworlders. The Tarvel sent a direct plea to them. The message was simple: please, our worlds are burning. We need aid, food, medicine, anything you can send. You are newcomers, but you know struggle. Do not let us fade away. In the chambers of the Galactic Concord, whispers filled the air. They asked the Deathworlders. One elder scoffed, his long tendrils curling in disapproval. Humans are reckless. They will only bring chaos, another said. But among the Tarvel, hope blossomed. They believed the humans would send freighters filled with supplies, perhaps doctors and engineers. Maybe, just maybe, enough help to let them endure until the conquered acted. Their leaders gathered in a great crystal hall, its spires glowing faintly with the light of their twin suns. The Tarvel High Speaker, Luran, looked tired. His voice trembled as he addressed his council. Humans know hardship. Their history is written in struggle. They will not abandon us. A silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of the chamber. No one truly knew what humans would send or how quickly they could come, but all agreed. It was their last chance. Far across the stars in the Sol system, the plea reached Admiral Reyes of the Terran Fleet Command. He read the message twice, his brow furrowed. Around him, the command center buzzed with quiet activity. Officers worked at glowing consoles, holographic maps displayed shifting territories, and the ever-present hum of machinery filled the air. Beside him, Captain Aisha Tan leaned closer. Sir, what are your orders? The conquered hasn't acted. If we intervene, it could be controversial. Reyes closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of Earth's past, wars, famine, disasters. Humanity had survived all of it, not because they waited for help, but because they fought to make their own future. He opened his eyes, steel in his voice. The Tarvel asked for aid. We will give it. Not words. Not promises. Real aid. Supplies? Tan asked carefully. Reyes shook his head. Supplies without protection are worthless. We'll send the fleet. The room went silent for a breath, then officers began moving with urgency. Orders were sent, ships prepared, engines roared to life. Humanity's answer would not be a whisper. It would be a storm. Weeks later, in the orbit of a battered Tarvel colony, alien eyes watched the void. Drexel warships loomed beyond the system, their silhouettes sharp and cruel. The colony's defense grid flickered weakly, little more than a gesture against overwhelming power. On the surface, families huddled in shelters, listening to the distant rumble of orbital bombardments. Above them, the last Tarvel defense frigate drifted, its hull scarred, its weapons nearly silent. Its crew prayed for a miracle. Then the stars shifted. The first human fleet arrived. To the Tarvel observers, it began as a faint ripple in the blackness. Then light blossomed as hundreds of ships tore through faster than light space. Their hulls gleamed with steel and fire. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, an entire armada. Gasps filled the Tarvel control room. One young officer cried out, "It's them!" "The humans," another whispered, almost in disbelief, "but these are not supply ships." Indeed, these were not freighters, not aid vessels packed with crates and medicine. These were warships, each one bristling with rail cannons, missile silos, and hangars full of fighters. The fleet moved in perfect formation, their engines burning bright like a rising dawn. High Speaker Luran stared at the display, his voice a mix of awe and fear. They sent their warriors, the Drexel noticed too. Their fleet shifted, predatory eyes turning toward the newcomers. The marauders were used to prey that ran or begged. Never before had an unknown species answered with such force. A Drexel commander sneered through his fanged maw, broadcasting a message across the system. His voice was harsh, dripping with arrogance. Humans, you are far from home. Leave now and we may spare you. Stay and we will burn your worlds next. On the Terran flagship, Admiral Reyes stood tall before the comms display. His uniform was simple, his expression calm. When he spoke, his words were not shouted, but they carried the weight of steel. You asked what aid means to humanity. This is it. Aid means safety. Aid means protection. And to those who threaten the weak, he paused, his eyes narrowing. Aid means we stand in their way. The transmission cut. Across the human fleet, weapons powered up, reactors glowed, and carriers launched waves of fighters. The silence of space was broken by the storm of war. In the Tarvel control room, officers leaned forward, their hearts racing. They had asked for help, and the humans had answered, not with supplies, but with a fleet of doom. And as the first human railguns fired, streaks of light tearing across the void, the Tarvel realized the truth. The Deathworlders had not come to comfort them. They had come to save them. The void of space was silent, but tension filled every corner of it. The Tarvel colony still trembled under the shadow of Drexel warships. Their citizens huddled in shelters, waiting for destruction to fall at any moment. But then, like a second dawn, the human fleet appeared. Hundreds of ships slid into orbit, their hulls sharp and strong, their engines burning like stars. To the Tarvel, who had only ever seen fragile freighters and diplomatic craft from humanity before, the sight was overwhelming. These are not supply ships, whispered one of the Tarvel officers, his voice trembling. No, replied High Speaker Luran, his eyes wide as he gazed at the display. These are ships of war. The Drexel were not impressed at first. They had fought hundreds of battles. To them, fleets were just prey in larger numbers. Their commander, a scarred warrior named Korvac, watched from the bridge of his flagship. His jagged teeth glinted as he grinned. Deathworlders, Korvac muttered, spitting the word as if it tasted foul. They believe numbers will save them. We will crush them like all the others. A Drexel officer leaned forward. Commander, shall we advance? Korvac raised a clawed hand. Not yet. Let us speak first. Let them know their mistake. The Drexel fleet broadcasted a message across the system. The voice of Korvac thundered in every comm channel, his tone dripping with arrogance. Humans, you are far from home. This is not your war. Leave now and we may spare your worlds. Stay and your species will be erased. In the human flagship Resolute, Admiral Reyes stood calmly on the bridge. Around him, officers watched the display screens showing the enemy fleet. Massive, cruel vessels shaped like blades and fangs. Captain Aisha Tan looked to Reyes. Sir, they are trying to intimidate us. Reyes gave a short nod. His voice was calm, steady, but every word carried weight. Then we will answer, he signaled the comm officer. Open channel. The human admiral's face appeared across the system, projected on Tarvel screens and Drexel command ships alike. Drexel, Reyes said evenly. You speak of erasing. You speak of fear. But we are not here to flee. We are here to stand. The Tarvel asked for aid. Humanity does not bring only words. We bring protection. We bring resolve, and we will not abandon them. He leaned slightly forward, his eyes narrowing. You threaten the weak. Now you face us. The transmission ended. For a heartbeat, silence filled the stars. Then the human fleet began to move. Carriers launched squadrons of fighters, sleek crafts darting out like a swarm of hunting birds. Cruisers and destroyers shifted into formation, shields glowing faintly as their weapons came online. Railguns hummed with stored energy, missiles loaded and drones activated in tight, perfect patterns. From the Tarvel colony, watchers could only gasp. They had never seen such coordination. To them, it was not a fleet. It was a storm made of steel and fire. Korvac snarled when the humans powered their weapons. So be it, he roared. Advance! The Drexel fleet surged forward, their ships shaped like jagged knives cutting through the void. They opened fire, streams of plasma and energy lancing toward the humans. The first shots lit up space like falling stars. On the Resolute, alarms chimed as enemy fire streaked closer. "Admiral, incoming volleys," shouted a tactical officer. "Shields holding steady," another reported. Reyes raised a hand. "Return fire." The order carried like thunder. Human cruisers fired their railguns. Slugs of metal, accelerated to unimaginable speed, ripped across the void. They tore into Drexel ships, smashing through armor as if it were paper. One Drexel cruiser exploded instantly. Another spun out of formation, broken in half. Missiles followed, hundreds at once, their engines glowing as they streaked into enemy ranks. The Drexel responded with counterfire, their plasma beams cutting into the blackness, but the humans' formations held. On the colony below, the Tarvel crowded around hollow displays, their hearts racing. For the first time in weeks, they saw Drexel ships burning. Cheers broke out, tears streaming down alien faces. "Look," one shouted. "The humans are pushing them back." High Speaker Lurin could barely breathe. They came with everything. But the battle was only beginning. The Drexel were predators, and predators did not give up easily. Korvac slammed his claw against his command chair. "Focus fire on their carriers. Break their wings," he snarled. Drexel warships shifted, unleashing waves of heavy plasma fire. A human carrier shuddered under the impact, shields glowing white before dimming. Fires spread along its hull, but its fighters kept launching, darting into the enemy ranks. Inside the Resolute, Captain Tan shouted, "Sir, they are concentrating fire on our carriers." Reyes's voice remained calm. "Protect the wings. Send destroyers to intercept." Like a school of predators, human destroyers darted forward, interposing themselves between carriers and the Drexel volleys. Their shields blazed as they absorbed the impact. But they answered with fierce counterstrikes. Fighter squadrons swarmed Drexel cruisers, peppering them with precise shots, distracting them, forcing them off balance. Human drones darted in small groups, attaching to enemy hulls and detonating in flashes of light. The battle became chaos, but to human eyes, it was controlled chaos. Every move had purpose. Watching from the ground, the Tarvel could hardly understand it. Their people had never fought like this. To them, war was confusion, terror. But the humans fought like a single being, every ship, every squadron moving as part of something greater. "They are not fragile," whispered a young Tarvel. "They are hunters." The Drexel were learning the same. Korvac roared as two more of his ships exploded under human fire. Still, his grin remained. "They fight well," he admitted grudgingly, "but they are not yet tested. Bring the siege engines forward." At his command, massive Drexel warships emerged from the shadows. Towering vessels armed with weapons designed to burn entire cities from orbit. Their arrival made the battlefield tremble. On the human flagship, sensors lit up. Officers stared at the screens. "Admiral," one reported, "the Drexel are deploying planetary siege engines. If they fire, they'll destroy the colony." Captain Tan finished grimly. Reyes stood silent for a moment, his eyes locked on the display. Then slowly he spoke. "It seems we must show them what real aid means." He turned toward his officers, his voice steady but filled with iron. "Prepare Project Hammerfall." The bridge fell silent. Then, without hesitation, officers moved to carry out his order. Across the human fleet, dreadnoughts shifted into position, their massive hulls unfolding to reveal weapons of terrible power. The stars seemed to bend as energy built, humming louder, brighter. From the Tarvel control room, eyes widened. "What are they doing?" one asked, voice trembling. High Speaker Luran's heart pounded as he watched. Something the galaxy has not seen before. The humans had come with a fleet. But now the Tarvel began to realize, and the fleet itself was only the beginning. The battlefield burned with light. Railguns, plasma beams, and missile trails cut through the darkness of space. Human and Drexel fleets clashed with fury, and the Tarvel colony below trembled as the battle raged above. For a moment it seemed balanced, both sides trading fire, both losing ships. But then the Drexel unleashed their greatest weapons. From the shadow of the stars, 3 colossal siege engines moved forward. Each was the size of a city, their black hulls covered in cruel spines and heavy cannons. They were designed for one purpose: to destroy planets. On the Tarvel surface, alarms blared. Screens showed the massive vessels turning toward the colony. If they fired, the shelters and cities below would vanish in fire. High Speaker Loran's voice shook. "If those engines fire, we are finished." On the Resolute, Admiral Reyes stood firm as the reports came in. "Admiral, the Drexel siege engines are powering their weapons," a sensor officer reported. "They're targeting the colony," another said, fear in his voice. Captain Tan looked to Reyes. "Sir, our standard weapons may not break through those shields fast enough." "What are your orders?" The Admiral's face was calm, though his eyes burned with quiet resolve. "Project Hammerfall." The words sent a chill through the bridge crew. Every officer knew what that meant. It was not a strategy of restraint. It was humanity's strongest blow, a weapon meant to remind the galaxy that Deathworlders did not fight halfway. Across the human fleet, dreadnoughts shifted. These were the giants of Earth's navy, ships built not only for defense but to strike fear into any who dared threaten them. Massive panels slid open on their hulls, revealing weapons hidden until now. Energy gathered at their cores, glowing brighter with each passing second. The void began to hum. The Tarvel control room watched in awe as the human ships unfolded. None of their people had ever seen technology like this. "What are they doing?" whispered an officer. Lurin's voice was hushed. "They are preparing something terrible." Korvac on the Drexel flagship laughed when he saw the humans' dreadnoughts shifting. "They think their toys will save them," he growled. "Fire the siege engines. Burn the colony. Show them what it means to face Drexel power." The 3 siege ships began to glow, their cannons charging with fire that could melt entire continents. Energy crackled around their spines, building toward release, but the humans were faster. "Admiral, Hammerfall is ready," an officer announced. Reyes raised his hand. His voice was steady. "Fire." The command echoed across the fleet. Human dreadnoughts unleashed beams of pure energy, focused and unstoppable. They tore across space in blinding arcs of light, striking the first Drexel siege engine. Its shields flared, but they shattered under the force. The beam cut through the massive vessel, splitting it in half. Fire erupted as the giant ship broke apart, pieces scattering like ash. Gasps filled the Tarvel command room. Never had they seen such destruction delivered so quickly. The second Hammerfall strike came immediately after. Missiles, massive in size, streaked toward the second siege engine. They detonated in perfect sequence, explosions rippling across its hull. The ship convulsed, its weapons silenced before it collapsed in on itself. The third Drexel siege engine fired in desperation, its massive cannons spitting a beam of fire. The blast streaked toward the Tarvel colony, but it never reached. Human interceptors swarmed, drones intercepting the beam's path with shields and sacrificial bursts. At the same moment, a human dreadnought fired another Hammerfall beam. It struck the third siege ship squarely, ripping it apart before it could fire again. In the void, 3 mighty Drexel weapons had fallen in moments. On the colony, Tarvel citizens who had been holding their breath erupted into cheers. Shelters shook with their voices. Tears streamed down faces as families embraced. For the first time since the invasion began, hope filled their hearts. High Speaker Loran whispered softly, "The Deathworlders. They came with doom, but they brought salvation." The Drexel fleet faltered. Their predators' pride turned to confusion. Korvac slammed his claws into his chair, his eyes wide with fury. "Impossible," he roared. "No prey has ever destroyed a siege engine, let alone 3. His officers looked shaken. For the first time, they doubted. "Commander," one stammered, what if they are not prey?" Korvac bared his teeth, growling low. "Then they are predators. But predators can still bleed." He barked orders. "All ships charge." "We take them down with numbers." "Overwhelm them." The Drexel fleet surged forward, desperate to close the distance. Admiral Reyes watched calmly as enemy ships advanced. His face remained composed, but every officer could feel the weight of the moment. "Admiral," Captain Tan said, "they're coming with everything they have." Reyes nodded slowly. "Then it's time to show them what everything means to us." He turned to the fleet's comms. "All ships, full engagement. Protect the colony at all costs. Break them." The order thundered across the fleet. What followed was chaos wrapped in precision. Human fighters swarmed enemy cruisers, darting between plasma beams, firing in perfect strikes at weak points. Destroyers intercepted enemy missiles, their shields blazing. Drones zipped across the battlefield, exploding against Drexel armor and forcing openings for larger weapons. Railguns fired in endless rhythm, each slug smashing apart another enemy hull. Carriers launched wave after wave of reinforcements. their hangars glowing with constant activity. To the Tarvel watching below, it was like watching a storm of fire under perfect control. "They fight like one mind," an officer whispered. Luran nodded. "They fight as if this is their home too." Still, the Drexel fought fiercely. Ships exploded on both sides, the void filling with fire and debris. Human destroyers sacrificed themselves to block enemy fire. Drexel cruisers rammed into human formations, desperate to break the line. But humanity held. Each time the Drexel thought they had found a weakness, the humans closed ranks, fighting harder. And every time a Drexel ship burned, cheers echoed across the Tarvel colony. Finally, the battle turned. The Drexel numbers thinned. Their ships, once sharp and confident, drifted in broken pieces. Their formation fell apart, commanders shouting in panic. Korvac roared, refusing to retreat. His flagship's weapons blazed even as alarms screamed around him. On the Resolute, Reyes watched the Drexel commander's ship appear on screen. "Target their flagship," he ordered. Human railguns aligned, dreadnoughts charging. The final hammerfall beam erupted, striking Korvac's ship with blinding force. Shields shattered, armor split, and the flagship exploded in a storm of fire. The Drexel fleet broke instantly. Without their commander, they fled into the darkness, retreating in scattered directions. The battlefield grew quiet. Only the glow of burning wrecks remained. On the colony, silence lasted for a heartbeat. Then cheers erupted louder than ever. The Tarvel sang songs of hope, voices rising to the stars. Families embraced, leaders wept openly. They had been saved. High Speaker Luran stood before his people, his voice trembling. The humans did not bring supplies. They brought something greater. They brought survival. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Reyes looked out at the stars. His officers smiled, exhausted but proud. Captain Tan stood beside him. "It's over, sir. They're retreating." Reyes shook his head slightly. "No, this battle is over, but the war has just begun." His eyes narrowed as he looked into the void. The Drexel now know humanity will not stand aside. And the galaxy knows what aid means when it comes from Earth. The stars shimmered quietly, but everyone on. The battlefield had quieted. Smoke and fire drifted through space, floating wreckage glinting in the faint light of distant stars. The Drexel fleet, once menacing and confident, had scattered into the void, their ships crippled, their pride shattered. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of human engines and the distant cries of the Tarvel below. High above the planet, in orbit, Admiral Reyes watched the remnants of the Drexel fleet retreat. His face was calm, but inside he understood the significance of what had just happened. Humanity had not merely defended the Tarvel. It had sent a message, and a message of power, precision, and unyielding resolve. "This is what aid means," Reyes said softly to Captain Tan, who stood beside him on the bridge of the Resolute. Tan nodded, still watching the streaks of retreating Drexel ships. "They'll spread word. Across the galaxy, everyone will know what the humans can do." Reyes did not answer. Instead, he opened the fleet's communications and sent a new transmission. Not to the Drexel, not to the Tarvel, but to every nearby system. "Be it known," his voice echoed across subspace, "that humanity does not stand idle while the innocent are attacked. We bring aid and we bring protection. Those who threaten the weak will find Earth's children waiting." The message reverberated through the galaxy. Ambassadors, traders, explorers, and warships received the signal. Across thousands of light years, species paused, their eyes turning toward the Sol system, toward the humans who had shattered expectations and broken the power of the feared Drexel. Among the Tarvel, the reaction was immediate. Citizens cheered, danced, and cried openly. Their fear had turned into hope, hope the galaxy had never given them before. High Speaker Luran raised his voice above the celebration. "They came not for glory. They came not for conquest. They came to save us. And now, we know that aid can take many forms stronger than we could have imagined." On the Drexel side, the mood was different. Commander Korvac had barely survived the final strike. His flagship was in ruins, drifting in deep space. Around him, officers and captains huddled, nursing injuries and broken pride. They are not prey," Korvac growled, voice low and dangerous. "They are predators," one officer dared to ask, trembling. "Then what do we do, Commander?" "The fleet is broken. We cannot fight them directly." Korvac's eyes narrowed. "Retreat. Live to fight another day." But mark this, humanity will pay for this humiliation. The galaxy will learn that even Deathworlders have teeth. Despite his words, a shadow of fear lingered among the Drexel. Never had a species so young, so underestimated, struck with such precision and overwhelming power. Back in orbit above the Tarvel colony, Admiral Reyes studied the stars. The battle had been won, but he knew this was only the beginning. Other predators, other marauders would hear of humanity's fleet, and they would test it. That was inevitable. "Sir," Captain Tan said quietly, "the Tarvel are asking about supplies. We still need to deliver food, medicine, and engineers." Reyes smiled faintly. "They will get those. But first they need to know they are safe. Protection is the first form of aid." Across the colony, Tarvel engineers were already preparing for repairs. Human drones and squads moved among them, stabilizing damaged buildings, setting up emergency power, and helping organize resources. Children ran through streets without fear for the first time in weeks. Farmers and workers returned to fields, reassured that their crops would not be burned. Everywhere, the humans' presence was both awe-inspiring and comforting. They fought like predators, yes, but they also moved with care, ensuring the Tarvel were safe even in the midst of chaos. This is more than aid," one Tarvel elder whispered to another. "This is guardianship." Meanwhile, the Galactic Concord convened an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species debated loudly, their voices carrying frustration, confusion, and even fear. "Humanity has violated neutrality," shouted one ambassador. "They have interfered in a conflict without approval. They have saved lives," another argued. "Would you rather the Tarvel had been annihilated?" "Regardless," a third representative said coldly, "they have altered the balance of power. No species can ignore them now. Deathworlders are not what we thought." Across the room, some delegates whispered, speculating on what the humans might do next. Others grew quiet, realizing the truth. No one had faced a species like this before. In the aftermath of the battle, humans did not celebrate. They remained vigilant. Scouts were deployed to follow the retreating Drexel, ensuring the marauders would not regroup and strike again. Sensors scanned the stars looking for threats. Fighters patrolled, and every ship remained on high alert. Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, staring at the Tarvel planet below. He thought of Earth, of its harsh deserts, frozen mountains, and violent storms, the challenges that had made humanity strong. Deathworlders were not born weak. They were born to survive. And now that survival instinct had been extended across the stars. Tan watched him quietly. "Do you think they will come back?" "They will," Reyes said simply. "But next time, they will remember what happens when they threaten the innocent." He turned his eyes to the stars, thinking not only of the Drexel, but of all other predators lurking in the galaxy. They would hear of humanity, and they would fear. The Tarvel Council met once more with the humans present. They wanted answers, explanations, and assurances. "Why did you fight like that?" High Speaker Luran asked. "We did not ask for warships. We only asked for help." Admiral Reyes regarded him steadily. "You asked for aid. The galaxy teaches harsh lessons. Aid without protection is meaningless. We did not bring fear. We brought security. That is the first form of help. Supplies and medicine are important, yes, but if your people had died while waiting, would they have mattered?" Luran's eyes widened. You are unlike any being we have known." Reyes gave a small nod. "We are survivors. And we survive best when we protect others along the way." The Tarvel citizens slowly returned to their lives. Schools reopened, markets thrived, and laughter once again filled the air. But even as normalcy returned, the presence of the human fleet remained. Ships patrolled in orbit, a silent promise of protection. Across the galaxy, news spread. Traders whispered in corridors. Explorers told stories at distant outposts, and ambassadors debated in halls of power. Humanity had arrived, and their way of helping had changed the definition of aid forever. In secret, some species grew nervous. They had underestimated humans once. They would not do so again. On the Resolute, Admiral Reyes gathered his officers. "Today we have saved a world," he said. "Tomorrow others may call upon us, and we will answer. Humanity does not run from danger. We do not wait while the innocent suffer. That is our way." Captain Tan smiled faintly. "They will tell stories of this battle for generations." "Yes," Reyes agreed. "Let them, and let every predator in the galaxy remember. When humans come, they bring more than weapons. They bring certainty. Aid is not a promise. It is action. The stars beyond the viewport were calm now, but they seemed to shimmer with possibility. Humanity's arrival had shifted the balance. A galaxy that once saw them as fragile and weak now understood one truth. Deathworlders are not to be underestimated. The Tarvel cheered once more below, not just for survival, but for the knowledge that they were no longer alone. Humanity stood with them, unwavering, relentless, and ready for whatever came next. And somewhere in the depths of space, where shadows and predators waited, the whispers began. The Deathworlders have arrived, and their aid is the strongest force in the galaxy. The Tarvel skies had returned to a calm blue, their twin suns casting gentle light across the repaired cities. The streets buzzed with life once again. Merchants sold fresh produce, children ran through gardens, and music floated from open windows. For the first time in weeks, the people felt safe, yet the shadow of the human fleet remained. In orbit above the planet, ships of every size patrolled methodically. Destroyers, carriers, and cruisers moved with quiet precision. Drones floated in patterns designed to detect threats before they could approach the planet. Humans did not relax. Safety required vigilance, and they were determined to uphold it. High Speaker Luran walked along the central plaza, observing the rebuilding efforts. He could still feel the awe of the past battles. The sight of humans destroying the Drexel siege engines, their unwavering calm in the face of danger. To him, their arrival had not just changed the course of a battle, it had changed the destiny of his people. A young Tarvel officer approached Luran. "High Speaker, the citizens are asking, why would humans risk so much for us? They are a new species far away from their home. Why would they fight so fiercely?" Luran paused, considering his words carefully. "Because, my friend," he said, "humans do not measure help the same way we do. To them, aid is not only in food, medicine, or words. Aid is action, protection, security. They fought because they believed our lives mattered, and they made sure that belief was real." Above the Tarvel colony, Admiral Reyes reviewed reports from his fleet. Drexel remnants were scattered, fleeing into deep space. Human scouts tracked them, ensuring they could not regroup and threaten the colony again. Yet Reyes knew the galaxy had taken note. Captain Tan stood beside him, watching the planet below. "They will tell stories of what happened here, sir. Every species will hear about humanity's arrival." Reyes nodded slowly. "Let them. Stories are lessons. And the lesson here is simple. When humans answer a call for aid, they do not come half-measured. They bring everything they have." The stars shimmered quietly beyond the viewport, reflecting the calm after the storm. Yet beneath that calm lay understanding. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. In the weeks that followed, Tarvel engineers, guided by human drones and specialists, repaired damaged buildings and infrastructure. Medicine arrived, distributed carefully to every village and settlement. Food was rationed fairly, ensuring no one went hungry while rebuilding continued. Children returned to schools, laughter once again ringing through the streets. Yet it was the human presence that mattered most. Patrols ensured that no lingering Drexel ships could approach. Drones scanned for threats, their sensors sensitive enough to detect even small marauder vessels hiding in distant orbits. For the Tarvel, it was not just about supplies. It was about the assurance that finally they were safe. High Speaker Luran met with Admiral Reyes in a temporary command center on the planet. "We owe you a debt beyond words," Luran said, his voice full of reverence. "You fought for us when no one else would. You saved our people, our homes, our future." Reyes smiled faintly. "We do not seek thanks. We act because we understand what it means to struggle and survive. Your fight became our fight the moment you asked for help." Luran paused, then asked quietly, "And yet, why did you not simply send supplies? Why send a fleet of warships?" Reyes' gaze was steady. "Because the galaxy is not always fair. Help without protection is meaningless. Had we sent only supplies, the Drexel would have destroyed them before they reached you. True aid includes safety. That is what we brought. That is what humanity always brings." Beyond the Tarvel system, news of humanity's actions spread like wildfire. Traders in distant star systems whispered in astonishment. Explorers told tales in spaceports. Diplomats debated in the halls of distant governments. Every species began to reconsider their assumptions. Humans were no longer fragile, underestimated beings. They were a force, and deliberate, precise, and relentless. Some feared them. Others admired them, but all understood the truth. Humanity had arrived and the galaxy would never be the same. In the Drexel sector, commanders whispered in fear. The surviving ships limped back to distant star systems. Korvac, their leader, hid in the shadows of a remote asteroid field. His pride was shattered, his confidence shaken. "They are not prey," he admitted to his officers. "They are hunters, and hunters do not forgive easily." Even among the Drexel, the legend of the Deathworlders' fleet began to grow. Stories spread of ships moving as one, of weapons capable of destroying colossal siege engines, of humans who fought to protect the weak rather than conquer. Fear mixed with respect, a combination the Drexel had never felt before. On the Tarvel planet, life slowly normalized. Families rebuilt homes, markets thrived once more, and children played in the streets without fear. Yet the Tarvel never forgot the lessons learned from humanity's arrival. High Speaker Luran called a council meeting, addressing both leaders and citizens. "Today we celebrate life, safety, and hope," he said. "Tomorrow we remember the lesson of the humans. Aid is not just giving. Aid is standing beside those who cannot defend themselves. And if danger comes again, we will know that there is a force willing to stand with us." The council members nodded, their faces solemn but inspired. Humanity had shown them a new way, not just survival but security and courage. In orbit, Admiral Reyes oversaw the final patrols of the human fleet. Ships moved in perfect coordination, scanning every system within range. Communication channels were silent as the humans waited, patient and watchful. Captain Tan looked at him. "Sir, the Tarvel are safe for now. What comes next?" Reyes's eyes swept across the stars. "The galaxy has learned our presence. Other predators will test us eventually. But every species that witnesses our actions today will understand one truth. Humans do not stand by while the innocent suffer. Aid is action. Aid is protection. Aid is certainty," Tan smiled faintly. "They will remember that." "Yes," Reyes said, voice calm but filled with weight. "And the next time anyone preys on the weak, they will hesitate." That is the meaning of aid. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Traders told stories of a fleet from a world called Earth. Deathworlders who had arrived with fire and steel, saving a civilization from certain destruction. Diplomats debated whether humans were to be feared or revered. Some species prepared to avoid them, while others quietly hoped for their protection in future conflicts. On the Tarvel planet, life returned to a new normal. The people rebuilt not only their homes but their trust in the universe. They had seen a new kind of strength, a combination of courage, skill, and compassion that they had never known before. High Speaker Luran addressed his citizens one final time before departing to oversee the last of the repairs. The humans came not because they were ordered, not because they sought reward, but because they understood the meaning of aid. Let this day remind us always, the galaxy can be dangerous, but we are never alone if there are those who stand for justice and protection. In the depths of space, where shadows once hid predators, the memory of humanity's fleet lingered. Every species that had witnessed the battle knew one truth. Deathworlders were not fragile. They were not weak. They were survivors, fierce, determined, and willing to bring their strength to those in need. And as long as humanity stood, no world would face destruction without hope. The stars shimmered quietly, holding the promise of new beginnings. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Humans bring aid not just in supplies, but in strength, protection, and the certainty that no innocent will face danger alone. In the Tarvel system, life had been saved. Across the galaxy, the legend of the Deathworlders had begun, and humanity was only getting started.